So how did you then, where did the Either Orchestra come in?
Well, Either Orchestra came in because I was finishing up my third semester at Berkeley, which was summer of '85. And I was kind of running out of money. As inexpensive as it was, I was paying for it myself. As inexpensive as it was, I was running out of money. But I was just starting to get a handle on being able to write scores that sounded kind of like what I wanted them to when people played them.
Sure.
So you know the feeling, right?
Yeah.
You go through that, like feeling your way around where you write stuff and they play it and you go, that's not what I was thinking. But I was starting to get a handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd also been going to New York, regularly all through these years. And I was enamored of Gil Evans' Monday night Sweet Basil Big Band.
Yeah.
Which was just an incredible organization, and it had these sprawling kind of rock and funk oriented rhythm sections, sometimes with 2 or 3 keyboards, guitar, Hiram Bullock often, different bass players, different drummers. And then, of course, this really amazingly rock solid horn section with Lou Soloff playing lead and saxophone players like George Adams and Howard Johnson in there. And this really great English guy, Chris something or other, who played alto, was sort of Sanborn-esque, and Gil sitting there hunched over his Rhodes piano in the front. And I loved the freedom of that band, like the way the rhythm section and the soloist could reshape the music, even though there were these like very involved orchestrated parts too, the way that all fit together. So I was really into that. Mm-hmm. I also always loved Sun Ra. That was always my favorite big band going back to the mid 70s.
Sure.
And but I was starting to get my score writing together, and I thought, shoot, I'm out of money now. There's no more project bands. Let me just get together a Monday night band. And I was living in this really rundown but cheap house in Cambridge that had a big room in it. So I said, I'm going to write some charts. I'm going to get some of my people to come together. And so I got some Berkeley cats, some people I knew from the rock world, a Harvard buddy who played piano, and just started doing these Monday night rehearsals, and people were enjoying it. And I always, made sure there was plenty of beer, which was, enough to hire musicians.
Yeah, right.
25-year-old musicians at that point. And after a few months, we got a gig, or I realized we needed a gig to keep our focus, and we got a free gig, and we played it in December of '85. And it just sort of one step after another. Then we started playing at clubs, and then I said, "Well, shoot, let's record." I, recorded with these rock bands I had been in before. I was like, "Shoot, we can do it with this." So we recorded an album worth of material or more in the studio and live. And I put out that album that was recorded in '86. The album came out in '87. And I just started collecting information. I was just kind of like a man on a mission. I just didn't have, there was nothing that nothing was stopping me, which is the good thing about being 25 or 26 years old. Yeah. Nothing could stop you. And I was lucky to have a lot of good things go my way. I had this very cheap rent-controlled house for rehearsals and to live in. I had experience as a radio DJ in college, so I knew how radio worked. So I was able to get our record on the radio all across the country, the first LP. And I, because from my journalistic writing experience, I was able to generate pretty good publicity material. So I was able to be a kind of a one-man operation, one-man little music company with these various skills that I had put in my pocket over the years.
Sure.
And then somewhere around '87, Tom Halter, who was been playing trumpet in the band since the beginning, said, "Let's go on tour." Oh, okay, let's take an 11-piece band on tour. Sure, ridiculous idea. Okay, let's do it. And so I sent everybody home. We were still young enough, so people were going home for Christmas and stuff. And I sent everybody home. I said, "Okay, find a place to play in your hometown." There were a lot of Midwesterners in the band. Mm-hmm. And so they came back with information. This is before the internet, so it was harder to find
sure, yeah.
stuff. And people came back with okay, I got a club in my town. I got a club in my town. I got a club in my town. And then the missing element, or the last element, was the Boston Globe covered me and my rhythm section, not the whole band, playing at a party. We were playing some kind of fundraiser party, and this journalist from the Globe, who wasn't a music writer but was like a consumer page writer, she wrote a page in the Boston in the Sunday magazine. She wrote us up as a great party band, even though that wasn't really our intent. Although we liked playing party music.
Sure.
And the phone started ringing, and I got like $40,000 worth of wedding and party gigs off of this thing. And so I said to the guys in the band, "Listen, we're going to be playing all these wedding and party gigs, which isn't exactly what our mission is, right?
Sure.
But let's save money, and we can afford to tour off of it.
Interesting.
We can have a tour fund." So we had a tour fund saved up that got us through our first 3 tours before we started really, breaking even. And when I say breaking even, I mean paying all the musicians. Not very much, but I was considered that you had to pay the musicians.
Yeah.
That it just seemed like you had to. And I figured out after one night where we crammed in 12 people into 3 hotel rooms, I figured out you need to get 1 bed per person.
Yeah, that's a big help. Yeah.
No cots, no doubling, no nothing. And those were the 2 keys to our early touring: was no more than 2 people per room and tour fund. And so we started touring around the Midwest. This was 88, 89. And we had a follow-up album, and just developing a fan base out there. And nobody was doing, like, jazz groups weren't doing that. We were kind of more following the punk rock, like, Van aesthetic at that point.
Sure. Yeah. Even now it's rare. I mean, people will fly places and do things, but in rock, funk, whatever world, everybody's on the road all the time. And in jazz world, it's kind of a funny thing. You got to really convince them to go someplace sometimes.
Well, jazz players,
that's tough with 11 people though, traveling around. I mean, would you have a van? And
yeah, I bought a van. I guess maybe, I can't remember if we rented first. I bought a minivan, and we rented a big 15-passenger van. And then the next tour, I think I bought a big van too. So I owned 2 vans there for years, like a big 15-passenger lunker,
sure,
and a minivan. And we just we except for the fact that we were playing jazz, we were behaving exactly like an indie rock band, down to the smoke, pouring out of the windows of the van.
Yeah.
And there was that first touring band was an incredible array of talent. I mean, it was the rhythm section was Jerome Dupree, later of Morphine, Mike Rivard, Club Delph, John Dirac, a legendary great guitar player, John Medeski, that was a rhythm section.
Yeah,
the horn section was like John Carlson, Tom Halter, Doug Yates, Charlie Colhase, Curtis Hasselbring, Russell Jewell. I mean, when I think about the talent that I had driving around the country, and everybody's getting paid $250 a week,
Sure. But at that time, you want to do it. You want to go on an adventure.
They didn't have anything better to do, and it was a great adventure. And the biggest thing was that the music came alive in a way that it could never happen here at home. And that was part of my jazz historian side, was like when I was examining like what I thought was great, because I loved the swing bands, going all the way back. I was always really aware of the stuff in the 30s, 40s. And, when I studied them, I was like, these guys play like they play this shit every day, which was true.
Yeah.
They don't play like they have music in front of them. And so I figured that to get the either orchestra to sound, if not like that, to have that kind of integrity, you had to try to recreate the work conditions. You know?
Sure.
And that was the goal. And everybody in the band really got that really quickly, that if we went out and played for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, the music was, 10 times as good at the end. And they were willing to sacrifice their crappy jobs in Xerox stores and whatnot to participate in that.
Sure. And there's no substitute for that. I mean, you listen to the Ellington Band in the 50s, or those guys played like 360 nights a year, some kind of wild thing like that, and they could play anything. I mean, it's an amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that group think is, and of course we admire the small groups like Coltrane Quartet and the Miles's various quintets and Mingus's bands and all that. And it's hard enough to keep 4 people together for a period of time, and to do it with a core of 10 or 15 people, it creates just a texture that you can't get any other way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but it's not easy to put the work in, put them out on the road, and make it happen. But
it's
this is
almost
a time
impossible
nowadays. But I think about that. It's kind of unfortunate that it is very difficult to maintain that consistent performance schedule, and without it, it's hard to you can't get a band as tight as you want it to be unless you're playing all the time and playing different gigs.
Well, it's a balance because the people that you would like to have in your band are great musicians, right? They're in demand. They've got their own projects going. They're in demand as sidemen from other people. They're playing and they're getting paid to play in shows or whatever. They got teaching, teaching jobs. So there's all of this, what's that, centrifugal force
Sure.
on that quality of musicians. You could put together a band of like musicians that aren't that good, and you'd have more of their attention. It's a balancing act. I mean, I've always just tried to get people that understood the project and could make a statement, had a personality. When you pointed to them and said, take a solo, they were going to say something.
Yeah.
That's been my philosophy.
Yeah, sure. So now let me go back a little bit. Where'd you come up with the format for the band? Were you thinking in terms of a little big band, or were you thinking in terms of the Gil Evans concept, or what was the instrumentation process?
Where it really came from, actually. It was originally 7 horns. It was 2 bones, 2 trumpets, 3 saxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I played a recital my last semester at Berkeley of a pianist, composer, arranger guy named Eduardo Souza, who's the younger brother or older brother, probably older brother of Luciana Souza, the great Brazilian singer.
Mm-hmm.
Eduardo was a very smart guy. I think their parents owned a recording studio, a really major league one in Brazil when they were growing up. So he grew up in music, and he wrote really interesting charts. And so I played on his recital. And when I was, probably just a month or two later, when I was putting together the Orchestra, I asked him if he wanted to play, and I asked if I could use some of his charts. So we had so I borrowed some of his charts at the beginning, and that I liked that 7-horn format. I guess it also, I've been a Birth of the Cool fan forever.
Sure.
And so I like that medium size, that's 6 horns and different horns from the orchestra. But,
right.
And I also felt like 7 horns, 11 people in the band, we had a 4-piece rhythm section then. That was small enough so everybody would be a soloist, would be a real significant soloist.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it is. You've played in big bands. If you're playing 4th chair trumpet or 3rd chair trumpet, whatever it is, you're not going to get a very big bite of the apple. And so
right.
but I wanted people that wanted in,
mm-hmm.
They wanted into the action. And so I figured that was about as big as you could go. It was also about as many people as I could fit in the rehearsal room too.
Sure. Yeah. That makes it, but it's enough that you can really, you can orchestrate it almost like a big band, and that you have sections and whatever, but
that's right.
You don't have to have all the extra people on hand.
In the first 10 years when we had 2 trombones, you really could, because you had a section of each. And so yeah, it was like a stripped down big band, but
mm-hmm.
It also forced what I noticed. It forced you to do what Ellington would do a lot. He did it by choice, which was cross-sectional combinations.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his hallmarks, is finding interesting combinations of instruments. And because we didn't have 5 saxes, if I wanted to have a 4-horn voicing with featuring saxophones, I had to slip a trombone in there or a trumpet, or figure out some other way to keep hiding the fact that we were losing voices.
Sure.
And so that was a really good exercise in economical arranging.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So now, are you writing the whole time you're on the road? Are you coming up with new stuff?
No. I didn't have that kind of. I think I wrote probably 1 or 2 arrangements during a tour out of all of our touring. I was not. I think part of it is that I like to hang.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. For sure.
So and also because we were so short-staffed, I was basically the road manager. Even though we had other road managers too, who did various kinds of driving and certainly helped out a lot with offstage mm-hmm. stuff. But I had a big managerial responsibility. So between, playing, drinking, and road managing. I didn't have that much spare brain space
Sure, yeah.
for arranging while I was out there.
So you're doing the charts, and then you go out, play them, get the stuff together, come back to Boston, write some more charts, make another album, get the thing rolling.
We had a cycle for a while, and I should add that there were other people writing excellent charts in the late '80s, early '90s. Probably the two biggest contributors were Curtis Hasselbrang, who's a great trombone player and a fantastic writer, and Bob Nesky, bass player, who was with us for a couple of years, who wrote a lot of really nice charts for us. And we continued to play both of their books, both of their repertoires long after they were out of the band. So they made an indelible, a sort of long-lasting mark on the band with their writing as well as their playing. And other people were chipping in here and there.